As we settle into our time together, I just want us to start to orient to talking about compassion and empathy and the brain. We're going to be doing that, and then we're going to be looking at what that neuroscience might mean for how we hold our clients in the room and also how we hold ourselves. So, empathy and compassion. It's a funny thing. Empathy actually has relatively little integration in it. So when we move into empathy, if somebody's feeling something that's really pleasant, like a love feeling or compassion feeling, and I move into empathy with that, my brain would start to mimic what their brain is doing, and I would move into compassion with them. But what's more likely is that they would be feeling something really hard, like fear or hurt or anger. If I move into empathy with them and only empathy, and I kind of stay in an empathetic space, what's going to be happening is my brain is going to start mimicking their brain. And if they're flooding, I might be flooding with them. Or sometimes when I work with some therapists, they're noting, oh, I can feel things that my client seems not to be feeling. So that would be somebody who's feeling a lot in their subcortical mind, but is more disconnected, like we were talking about at the end of last session. So when we move to empathy, what happens is this subcortical system has a lot of excitatory neurochemicals in it. And we might move into an experience of pain with. What's interesting about that is if we stay there, we're going to be in a space where there's quite a lot of fire in the system. And all that electrochemical communication that's so excitatory, we tend to eventually want to move away from the source of the pain. So here's my insula, a little part deep in the middle of the brain. If I went like this and stuck my finger way down in there and kind of hooked it up in a little curve, I would touch the insular cortex. It does interoception for us. And that cortex is going to notice, oh, I feel in pain, I feel in pain, I feel in pain. And eventually we'll want to back away from or attempt to change the thing that's causing us pain. And so if we stay in empathy only, we're lighting our lower system on fire a bit. We're going to stay in pain, and I'm likely to actually move away from the source of the pain, in this case, the person I am empathizing with. So my client. Compassion works really differently. So empathy is a part of the compassion process. We do feel with, and then we switch into feeling for as well. And when that happens, we move into a really, really different state in the brain. So this area here is called the anterior cingulate cortex. It processes meaning of pain. The insular cortex, like I told you, it's like way up inside this fold. And the amygdala, which is down inside that temporal lobe. Amygdala, meaning of fear. Insula, experience of pain. Anterior cingulate, meaning of pain. So those three areas of the brain are feeling the stuff. And when we move into compassion, there's this new space. The orbital medial prefrontal cortex, that's our witnessing mind, works in coordination with this little crescent space, the ventrolateral and lateral prefrontal cortex, and just a little bit of that dorsolateral prefrontal cortex from earlier, but this time it's sending calming neurochemicals all down to all those three areas. So when we move into compassion, we feel with, but we also feel for, and we move into a space where we downregulate our own subcortical systems. So what does this mean for our clients? Well, when a client is receiving compassion, the right hemisphere, that right little, we saw those little crescent moons, that crescent moon lights up as it receives compassion from me. So if I were giving compassion to you, then what would happen is as you receive that, oh, yeah, that's so hard. What happens is that experience soothes the subcortical system from the right hemisphere. And if my client moves into self compassion, it does that same thing, but from the left. So that left crescent lights up and sends GABA, that calming, inhibitory neurochemical, down to my subcortical system. So for our clients, if we're focused a little bit more on compassion than we are on empathy, and empathy is a part of compassion, it's just the compassion adds in this prefrontal cortex witnessing space. So as we're with our clients in this space and we're inviting them into compassion towards themselves and inviting them to receive compassion from us on both hemispheres of their brain, they're now able to send calming neurochemicals down into that subcortical brain system. So it just goes, oh, it's okay. Another thing to think about is, what does this mean for us? I actually think compassion is a burnout prevention in two ways. One, compassion has a movement towards in it because I feel calmer in my system. I can have more energy and more curiosity moving towards you. So I'm going to help my client feel less alone. Empathy, if I just were to stay there, again, we were talking about how much pain that can create. Eventually, I'll move away from the source of the pain. So I'll distance myself psychologically from my client, or I'll want them to do it differently. I'm going to try to have some sort of agenda, which we'll get into later in this module, about why that's a problem. I might try to get them to be different than they are. It's probably not going to work out great. And so I end up feeling like, oh, I'm not doing great work, or I'm feeling really frustrated with this client, or I want to push this client away. At least psychologically, if not actually. It's one of those where you see them on your calendar and you go, oh, God, okay. If that's happening, you may be having empathy fatigue. So empathy fatigue is a thing, and compassion fatigue, interestingly, when we're actually talking neuroscientifically, no such thing. There is no end to compassion. So for those who started studying compassion meditation in Tibet with the Buddhist monks who practice compassion meditation, what they were noticing is when the monks were in empathy, their brains were in high distress, but when they were in compassion, there was an unending space of soothing inside the brain. So it went so far as to say when the monks were offered a break between the empathy exercise and the compassion exercise, like, would you like to take a break and go to the restroom, and then we'll come back and do the compassion part of this, and they're inside the MRI machines. And the monks were saying, no, please let me go ahead and do the compassion meditation. It will help my heart feel better. And so what happens is, if we're in a space of compassion towards our clients, we're going to prevent some of our burnout by helping us soothe our own limbic systems and basal ganglia systems, all the subcortical area. The other thing that is a huge burnout prevention when it comes to compassion is how we can utilize self-compassion in the chair. So if I have a moment where something went in a way that was unexpected, and it surprised me or scared me, or it felt insulting, or it felt like a client said something hurtful, or it could be that I was beating myself up because I felt like I did an intervention that really didn't work. If I could use self-compassion in that moment, I'm going to use this same thing I'm trying to teach my clients to use. And it's great modeling for them, and it's burnout prevention for us. So I wonder what it would be like even now, just to think about, oh, how would I send compassion to myself even while I was in the chair? I'm just thinking about, as a trauma therapist, sometimes I bear witness to really hard stories. And I use compassion towards me as a way of helping me stay in connection with my clients. So it may look like, even inside, Jules, this is a really hard story to hear. Yeah, this person went through that, and now you're sharing that with them. It's a really hard story to hear. Let it move on through, and we're going to let it go out to the earth. I have a little visualization work where I let the story move through me, through my feet and into the ground, so that I don't hold on to it. So it can help me lean in or not try to regulate how they tell that story, or so that I can be okay. I might help them regulate how they tell that story so it ends up more gentle for them. But I don't need to manage how they're doing that for me to be okay. When I think about all the things we've been layering in Module 1, how complicated it is to be a human, how complicated it is to watch our own minds, to try to navigate all of this stuff, to live from our histories every moment of every day. When I think about how likely it is that we'll perceive danger, even if it's not there, I don't know. It feels like compassion is the only coherent answer. And I think that's true for us too. That to do this job, to bear witness, to hold grief with someone, knowing we can't do anything. I'm thinking about a person who did get sick and did pass, but seeing him through the end of his illness and bearing witness to that so that he wouldn't have to be alone, that was really hard to hold. So compassion is something that I can do for me, and is really the only coherent answer for me in the chair too, just like it's the only coherent answer for them. So when I think about how we can utilize this neuroscience with our own therapeutic presence, I have a little offering for you. Could you, even in your notes or maybe in a journal somewhere, just explore, how do I talk to myself when I'm inside the therapy chair? And what would happen if I added a little bit more of a practice of compassion into that experience? This is the end of session 1. In session 2, we're going to look at the 2 hemispheres of the brain, how they process information, and how we might hold that in our therapeutic stance.